Yeah, I mean, it could be that by committee approach. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I think that Davion Gause is really the lead back in this room. And I think he's going to be the guy that you're expecting to come out and really carry the water for this team. Yeah, I think there are some other guys that are going to have to be involved. There's no doubt about that. You would like to see a guy like Caleb Hood stay healthy, and we'll get to him here in just a minute. But I mean, Davion Gause, I mean, you look at him last year, ran for 326 yards and 4 touchdowns on 67 carries, caught 4 passes for 45 yards. What was weird was in the bowl game wasn't really used all that much. Carolina really strayed away from using him, only 5 carries for 12 yards in that bowl game. But that bowl game was just such a disaster that I think it was basically a throwaway. The thing to me that really stood out about him was when Carolina lost Amarian Hampton early in the game against Charlotte, really in 3 quarters, Davion Gause ran for 105 yards, a touchdown on 16 carries. I think this is a guy that is more than capable of leading this room, more than capable of putting the team on his back. Do I think that he is going to be what Amarian Hampton was in his time at Carolina? Certainly, I do not think that. You're talking about a guy in Amarian Hampton that we were having conversations about if Carolina did enough win-wise, would he be a guy that could be a Heisman Trophy type running back because of the numbers that he was putting up for Carolina? I don't think we're going to be talking about that at all when it comes to Davion Gause. But I do think that he has a chance to be a really, really solid player. I do think that he has a chance to be an all-ACC caliber runner. And, when I went back and watched him, I think the thing that stands out about him is, yeah, he runs with a nice edge. I do think there is a little bit of physicality to his game. I don't think he's going to be super bothered by the contact. There were a couple of runs, specifically in the game against Virginia, where he just runs right through a guy. That's certainly an element of his game that is there. It's not nearly as frequent as you saw from Amarian Hampton, but I do think that he's got that. My thing with him is very, very patient running back, very decisive. And when he ends up hitting the hole, he has some really nice bursts. I mean, this is a guy that when he finds where he wants to run, he is able to get up the field very quickly. So I do think it'll be a little bit different. Still a guy that I think is going to be able to have success in those A and B gaps where Amarian Hampton did because of how well he was able to get downhill. But I think he's going to be a guy that's able to really run just about anywhere on the field, get to the point that we saw with Hampton, maybe just not at the same level of explosiveness that we saw from him, although he did end up hurdling a guy last year, so you never really know. I just think it'll basically be, in my opinion, a little Amarian Hampton light with Davion Gause.
Yeah, I think he's going to be, he's going to be a patient runner who's going to want to set up his blocks. But when he finds that hole, when he finds a seam in the defense, he's not going to be afraid to, burst through it. I don't think he's going to be a guy that shies away from contact either. And so the Carolina run game might have a different approach. It might have a different feel because it's not just going to be pounding Amarian up the middle because he was so damn physical. He was able to wear opponents down. Might be a little bit more kind of what you saw. Michael Carter was a very patient runner, the guy that could kind of sit back there, wait for the hole to develop, but once that hole developed, be able to exploit that. But was also physical enough to break tackles and turn 4-yard runs into 6-yard runs, 6-yard runs into 8-yard runs, so on and so forth. And so I think he's a guy that obviously Carolina fans know about him. If you talk to people that know ACC football, they may know about him. But I think this will be a guy, considering we expect Carolina to be playing in national TV windows almost virtually every week. ESPN is banking on Carolina being good enough to put them in big windows. I think this will be a guy that the country will learn about and really see the talent that he possesses, the skill that he possesses, and will be, as I mentioned from the very first comment I made, not just a breakout star for Carolina, not just a breakout star in the ACC, but I think could be a breakout star across the country as well. And so, I think you really got to tip your cap to how this running back room, really since Mack Brown got back to Carolina in 2019, they've been able to replace great running backs. You had Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, that went straight into Amarian Hampton. Now Davion Gause is the next guy that I think is primed and ready to be a 1,000-yard back that's going to be productive for Carolina. And I think for the first month of the season could be the focal point of what they try to do offensively.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I'm going to be really interested in is, do they lean on the run game early in the season? I know that, Gause is a guy that they have never really had to lean on. I mean, they did a little bit in that game against Charlotte. Remember, they were really still compromised at the quarterback position in that game against the 49ers because Connor Harrell really wasn't doing a whole lot. I mean, he wasn't horrible in that game, but he certainly wasn't a guy that was coming out there driving Carolina's offense down the field with ease. I just wonder how much responsibility do they put on him early in the season. And to me, I think he's a guy that's more than capable of handling it. I mean, this is a guy that, you look at how productive he was in the high school level. He was a guy that his school leaned on a lot early on in his career. Now, as it got later on, all of a sudden they discovered, hey, we've got this guy, a wide receiver in Jeremiah Smith, who looks pretty good. He might be the top wide receiver in this recruiting class, and now that might be the top player in all of college football. But still, Davion Gause was a guy that they looked to and used in the run game pretty often. So I think he's a guy that's capable of being that workhorse back. I think it's just, about giving him time, understanding that there will be some bumps in the road potentially for him. Go back to Amarian Hampton. There were bumps in the road for him early on in his career too. And Carolina was able to work through that. He becomes one of the most productive running backs in Carolina history. I think you could see something similar from Davion Gause if Carolina gives him time. I don't know if he's going to put up, again, those numbers that you saw from a guy like Amarian Hampton, but I do think, could you see him more as a guy that produces 1,200 rushing yards at his best? Or maybe this year, it gets to 1,000 yards. That's really what you're looking for, I think, from Davion Gause to sort of carry this running back room. Now, here's the thing, last thing about Davion Gause here. When you look at it, I have this guy as one of my breakout players that we'll talk about. We'll put up an article about them as we get closer to the season. When you look at the breakout players that you have on your list, really there's two that come to mind for me that would be at the top of the list. Is this the guy that you have right at the top of your list, or is he below the other guy that I would think would probably be atop your list?
I guess if you want to go 1A, 1B with Jordan Shipp, they're right there in the same category. Because, and we can have this conversation here really quickly, does Gio Lopez consider a breakout player because he's a transfer coming from the group of 5 level? Because I told you what I think Gio Lopez is capable of doing. If he does what I think, if he puts up 3,500 yards and 30 total touchdowns, I think he would most certainly qualify as a breakout guy. But two guys that I guess you could say were on the roster a year ago that I'm expecting more this upcoming year, I think Jordan Shipp is going to I think he will garner all ACC attention once we get to the end of the season. And I think the same thing about Davion Gause. I think there'll be guys that when we're voting at the end of the year, these will be guys that will be getting some recognition. And if I remember correctly, because I filled my ballot out last night, he was not on the preseason stuff. So if he's there at the end of the year, that would most certainly qualify as a breakout guy, because I think Jordan Shipp is capable of being an 800-plus yard receiver with anywhere from 6 to 8 touchdowns. And I think Davion Gause is capable of putting up, I would say at a minimum, I think he cracks the 1,000-yard threshold. I was kind of thinking in my head, how sexy do I want to get? Do I want to go 12, 13, 1,400 yards? I don't know if I want to get that dangerous sitting here before we get to training camp, but I do think there's going to be a lot of production there. And so whenever we do our breakout stuff, him and Jordan Shipp will be right there at the top of the list for me.
Yeah, that's who I got atop the list as well. I think those are the two guys that you would probably debate the most because I do think that Davion Gause probably feels like the safest of that group because we've seen what he's been able to do. Jordan Shipp, we got some flashes from him, but we didn't really see that one game where he was really able to take over, not like we saw from Davion Gause. So I would say that Davion Gause is the guy that I would go with as the safer of the two to have a breakout season, but I think both guys are destined for big years. I think and maybe this ends up making my bold predictions. I think that Davion Gause runs for 1,000 yards. I think that's one that's going to be up there because I really like his run style. I think that he was a guy that really just needed to land in the right system at the college level to be able to have success, because people were questioning whether or not the production at the high school level was legit. Why did it drop off? I think he's in a system that's going to use him pretty heavily, and it's going to allow him to be successful. So I think Davion Gause, very safe breakout player if you're looking for one of those guys for this upcoming season. And when it comes to Gio Lopez, I would say, yeah, you could put him on there as a breakout player. The thing for me is I don't think he's nearly as safe of a bet as guys like Gause or Jordan Shipp. I think both of those guys are probably safer bets just because you do have that jump from the group of 6 to the Power 4 conference for Gio Lopez. I'll be interested to see how he navigates that.